So, yeah. This happened last night, and I'm still trying to process it. You know when a date goes so off the rails that you just sit there afterward, staring into space, wondering what choices led you to this moment? That's me right now. I, 28M, have been talking to this girl, Emily, 26F, for a couple of weeks. We met through a mutual friend, hit it off over text, and decided to finally meet in person. She picked this little trendy restaurant downtown, one of those places that has a lot of plants, overpriced food, and an Instagrammable vibe. I was down. The night started fine. Emily looked amazing, we clicked in person just like we did over text, and everything seemed like it was heading toward a normal, good date. But, oh boy, did that change fast. First, the waiter kept giving me weird looks. Like, really weird. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, but every time he passed by, he'd glance at me like I had personally wronged him in a past life. Then, while we were waiting for our food, this couple at the next table started whispering and side-eyeing me too. Emily didn't notice at first, but I was definitely picking up on it. Then, right as our food arrived, the dog showed up. Yes. A dog. Inside the restaurant. And it was not a friendly-looking one. So, yeah. A dog. In the restaurant. And not like some tiny emotional support chihuahua or a chill golden retriever. No, this thing was a beast. It looked like a mix between a German shepherd and whatever hellhound guards the gates of the underworld. At first, I thought, okay, maybe someone brought their dog, and it just got loose. But no. This dog had purpose. It walked right in, locked eyes with me, and I swear to God, I saw pure hatred in its soul. Emily finally noticed and was like, wait, why is there a dog in here? Before I could answer, the waiter, the same one who had been looking at me funny, just muttered, oh. He found you. He found me? At this point, my brain was spinning. The dog was getting closer, its nails clicking on the floor, and I was starting to wonder if I had accidentally offended a wizard or something. Meanwhile, Emily was just sitting there, sipping her overpriced cocktail, oblivious to the fact that I was about to be mauled. Then, out of nowhere, the dog lunged. So yeah. The dog lunged at me. And when I say lunged, I mean full speed, fangs out, straight for the throat type of attack. Now, I'd love to say that I handled this like an action hero, that I flipped the table over and did some kind of epic dodge roll. But no. My dumbass reaction? I threw my fork at it. A fork. It bounced off the dog's head with the impact of a gentle breeze, and the beast didn't even flinch. Meanwhile, Emily just let out this half-gasp, half-laugh, like she couldn't believe what was happening. Honestly, same. Right before the dog made contact, I did the only thing my survival instincts could come up with. I grabbed the breadbasket and shoved it directly into its mouth. Miraculously, it worked temporarily. The dog clamped down on a sourdough roll instead of my arm, which gave me enough time to flip my chair back and scramble away. At this point, the entire restaurant was in chaos. People were screaming, the waiter was shaking his head like I should have known this would happen, and Emily just sat there, still holding her drink, completely frozen. Then, because apparently this wasn't insane enough, the chef stormed out of the kitchen, saw the dog, and yelled, "Damn it, RX. Not again. Not again?" So now the chef was involved. A big dude, arms covered in flour and what I hope was marinara sauce, stomping toward the chaos like this was just another Tuesday for him. Meanwhile, the dog Rex, apparently, was still chewing on a sourdough roll but very much not done with me. I was half crawling, half scooting backward across the floor, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. Then the chef yelled, "Who let him out?" And the waiter, the one who'd been acting super weird all night, just shrugged and went, "He found him." At this point, I was beyond confused. Found me? Like this was some bounty hunter situation? Did I owe this dog money? Did I unknowingly date his ex? Emily, who had been silent through all of this, finally spoke up. And you know what she said? Not "Are you okay?" or "What the hell is going on?" No. She looked at me, then at the chef, and asked, "Wait, does this have something to do with his job?" What? Excuse me. I turned to her, still on the damn floor, and was like, "What do you mean, my job?" She hesitated. You work in finance, right?" "No, Emily. I do IT support." Emily blinked. "Oh. Then never mind." Then never mind? Before I could even begin to process whatever that meant, the dog suddenly spat out the sourdough roll, locked eyes with me again, and growled. Chef sighed. "Welp. You better run." And let me tell you, I did. So yeah, I ran. Like full speed, no thoughts, just survival ran. I bolted past tables, knocked over a chair, and nearly tripped over some hipster dude's artisanal charcuterie board. Behind me, Rex let out this deep, demonic bark that rattled my bones. The chef shouted something, but I was too busy sprinting for my life to process whatever the hell he was saying. I made it to the restaurant entrance, grabbed the door handle, and yanked. It didn't budge. I yanked again. Still nothing. The door was locked. At this point, my brain completely short-circuited. Since when do restaurants lock their doors from the inside? Before I could even think about my next move, I heard the sound of claws scraping against the floor behind me. I whipped around just in time to see Rex launch himself through the air. And then out of absolutely nowhere, Emily tackled me. Yes. Emily. The girl I was on a date with. She dove straight at me, slammed into my side like a linebacker, and sent both of us crashing into a nearby dessert cart. Plates shattered. A tiramisu went airborne. I think I heard an old lady scream. Meanwhile, Rex missed, barely, and went skidding across the floor. I lay there in a pile of broken plates and whipped cream, gasping for breath, staring at Emily like what the hell was that? And she, completely unfazed, just muttered, "You owe me for that." I had no idea what she meant. But before I could ask, the chef finally caught up, grabbed Rex by the collar, and growled, "All right. I think it's time we had a little talk." So there I was. On the floor. Covered in dessert. A murderous dog still trying to eat me. And now the chef, a man built like a fridge, was looming over me, arms crossed, looking extremely unimpressed. Meanwhile, Rex was still growling, straining against the chef's grip like he personally needed to settle a decades-old vendetta against me. Emily, on the other hand? She dusted herself off like nothing happened. As if she hadn't just tackled me into a damn tiramisu. Chef sighed. "All right, kid. Be honest with me." I was panting, still trying to process the last 5 minutes. "Honest about what?" He narrowed his eyes. "You really don't know why he's after you?" "Who? The dog?" I gestured wildly at Rex, who was still vibrating with rage. "No, I don't know why a random hellhound wants me dead." Chef glanced at Emily. "You brought him here?" Emily just shrugged. "I didn't know." "Didn't know what?" I was losing my mind. Chef turned back to me, rubbing his temples like I was giving him a migraine. "All right, listen. This dog only reacts like this to one type of person." I braced myself. "And that is?" Chef squinted at me like he was reading my soul. Then he leaned in, real serious, and said, "Criminals." "Excuse me?" I actually laughed. Like, full-on hysterical laughter, because that was somehow the most ridiculous thing I had heard all night. "You think I'm a criminal?" Chef just pointed at the dog. "Rex thinks so." I glanced at Rex, who snarled on cue. What the hell was going on? So now, according to the random chef in the random restaurant, I was a criminal because the random dog had decided so. I looked at Emily, hoping for some kind of backup here, but she just raised an eyebrow and went, "Huh? Huh?" Chef kept his arms crossed. "So, you want to tell me why Rex is trying to rip your throat out, or are we gonna have to do this the hard way?" I threw my hands up. I literally work in IT. I don't even steal Wi-Fi. I have no idea what's happening right now. But then, I swear to God, the waiter came back. "Remember that shady dude who'd been giving me weird looks all night?" Yeah, him. He walked over, arms folded, and went, "Wait. Your name's Jake, right? Okay. That was it. I was officially in a Twilight Zone episode." Yeah, I said cautiously. The waiter nodded slowly. "Huh. Yeah, that explains it." "Explains what?" I was 2 seconds away from flipping a table. Chef sighed, then turned to the waiter. "Alright, so is it him or not?" The waiter studied me for a second. Then, completely deadpan, he said, "Nah. Wrong Jake." "Excuse me? Wrong Jake?" I almost fell over. I had been chased, tackled, and nearly murdered by a dog because I had the same first name as some other guy? Meanwhile, Chef just shrugged like this was no big deal. He patted Rex on the head and went, "Alright, buddy." False alarm. Rex immediately relaxed. Just sat down like a perfectly normal dog. No growling. No murder vibes. Just vibes. I was still on the floor, covered in dessert, trying to process the absolute insanity of the last 10 minutes, and all Chef had to say was, "My bad." My bad? I looked at Emily, expecting her to be as horrified as I was. But instead, she just took a sip of her drink and went, "See? Told you it wasn't about your job." I almost screamed. So let me get this straight. I got attacked by a dog, tackled into a dessert cart, and accused of being a criminal, all because I had the same first name as some other dude? And now the chef, who, might I remind you, had been totally fine with a dog attempting homicide in his restaurant, just hit me with a casual "my bad" like I had been slightly overcharged for an appetizer? Meanwhile, Rex, the demon hound from hell, was now just chilling like he hadn't just tried to commit a crime against me. I sat up, covered in whipped cream and existential dread, and just stared at everyone. "So, that's it? We're just moving on like this was normal?" The chef shrugged. "I mean, yeah." The waiter, the guy who had identified me as the wrong Jake after the attempted mauling, just patted my shoulder and said, "Happens more often than you'd think." I would not think this happens often. At this point, my brain had entered some kind of shock loop. I turned to Emily, hoping for some sort of normal human reaction. Instead, she just giggled. Giggled. Like this was some quirky first date mishap and not a full-blown assassination attempt via dog. She tilted her head at me. "So, you still hungry?" I had no words. So now Emily, the girl who literally tackled me into a dessert cart, was just sitting there, sipping her drink, acting like this was a totally normal date. Meanwhile, I was still on the floor, covered in whipped cream, trying to understand how my life had reached this point. I wiped some frosting off my shirt and just stared at her. "Am I still hungry?" Emily nodded. "Yeah. I mean, the food did look really good before all the chaos." I turned to the chef, who was casually walking back toward the kitchen like he hadn't just sicked his hellhound on me. "Are we just ignoring the fact that this happened?" Chef waved a hand dismissively. We'll comp your meal." Oh, well then. Guess almost getting eaten alive was fine as long as I got a free entree. I turned back to Emily, fully expecting her to want to leave after all this, but nope. She just gestured toward my chair like she was waiting for me to sit back down. I blinked. "You still wanna eat here?" Emily shrugged. "We have a free meal. Might as well." I had never been more confused by a human being in my entire life. But then my stomach growled loudly. And I realized that, I was actually still starving. So, I did what any completely broken man would do. I sighed, stood up, brushed off as much whipped cream as I could, and sat my dumbass back at the table. So I sat back down. Because at this point, why not? If my life was gonna be this insane, I might as well get a free meal out of it. Emily looked completely unbothered, like she hadn't just witnessed a live-action episode of National Geographic's When Animals Attack. She just smiled at me and said, "See? Now we have a fun story." Fun. Story. I had almost been murdered by a dog, accused of being a wanted criminal, and tackled into a pile of desserts, and this girl thought it was a quirky little moment. At this point, the waiter, who, might I remind you, had misidentified me and caused all this chaos, came back like nothing had happened and casually asked, "So, you guys still good with your order, or you want to see the menu again?" The audacity. I stared at him. Dude. A dog just tried to kill me. He nodded. Yeah, but you survived. So, drinks? I turned to Emily. She just smiled and went, I could go for another cocktail. I had officially lost control of the night. So, after almost being murdered by a dog, tackling my date into a dessert cart, and getting accused of being a criminal, I was supposed to just sit there and pretend everything was fine? Apparently, yes. That's exactly what happened. Emily ordered another cocktail like she was at a spa retreat, while I stared at my half-empty plate of food like I was waiting for the ghost of Rex to come back and finish what he started. I couldn't even look at the waiter anymore. Every time he walked by, I imagined him casually offering me a treat for the dog, like it was some twisted dinner theater experience. But the worst part? Emily. Emily was acting like nothing happened. She kept chatting, asking me about my work, laughing at my awkward jokes, and acting like we were just two normal people having dinner. I was stuck in this weird emotional limbo, where a part of me was still processing the trauma of nearly being eaten alive by a dog, and another part of me was still incredibly hungry because, let's be real, I hadn't eaten anything since I got here. But hey, free meal, right? As the night dragged on, I tried to focus on the food at chicken parmesan, which was shockingly good despite the chaos, but my mind kept drifting back to the absurdity of it all. Finally, I had to ask. Emily, why are you still here? Like, why are we still doing this? She paused, glanced at me, and then said the most ridiculous thing. Honestly? I just really like the vibe of this place. The vibe of this place? This place that almost got me killed by a demon dog? Emily went on, plus, now we've got a funny story to tell at parties. And just like that, it hit me, this was her normal. So now I'm sitting there, my brain completely fried, still processing that I just survived a dog attack in a restaurant and somehow managed to keep my dignity intact, kinda. Meanwhile, Emily's sipping her second cocktail like we're just two casual people enjoying a night out. I don't know why, but something in me snapped. The whole absurdity of it all finally hit, and I just couldn't pretend like this was okay anymore. So I looked at her and asked, "Are you really okay with all this?" She blinked. What do you mean? Like, we just got attacked by a dog. People were screaming. I got tackled into a dessert cart. And you're acting like it's some kind of adventure. She thought about it for a second, then shrugged again. Well, I mean, it's definitely not boring. That was it. That was the moment when I realized this date was definitely not going anywhere. I could feel the tension creeping in, and before I could overthink it, I just stood up. I think I'm gonna pay and head out. She didn't even seem fazed. Oh, yeah? You don't want dessert? I shook my head. No more food. I need some fresh air. And a therapist. She smiled, casually. Well, at least you'll have a great story for your next date. I froze. Next date? We were literally in the middle of a disaster and she was already talking about the future? Nope. I asked the waiter for the check. He handed it over with a smile, then added, "Complimentary dessert for you too, on the house." I looked at him, dumbfounded. Did you just hear the part where a dog tried to eat me? He just nodded and said, Rex's apology. That was it. That was the final straw. I threw a couple of bills on the table, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of there faster than I ever have in my life. So now I'm standing outside the restaurant, alone. My heart is still racing, and I feel like I just got dragged through the worst, most absurd version of a romantic comedy. I'm also covered in dessert, emotionally fried, and most importantly, I still can't shake the feeling that I've just been in some kind of fever dream. I take a deep breath, trying to calm down. What just happened? Was I just part of some bizarre life experiment to see how far someone can be pushed before they snap? Before I could overthink it too much, I hear footsteps behind me. It's Emily. She's strolling up with a big smile on her face like we didn't just have the most chaotic evening ever. "You okay?" she asks, clearly not noticing the fact that I'm completely breaking down inside. "Yeah," I managed to say, but it comes out like a question more than a statement. I don't know if I can do this." She stops in front of me. "What do you mean?" I sigh. "I mean this entire night. The dog, the chaos, you, acting like it was normal." She crosses her arms, still smiling. "You're overthinking it. It's not that big of a deal." That's when I finally lose it. "Not that big of a deal?" I exclaim, throwing my hands up. I almost got eaten by a dog, tackled into a dessert cart, and humiliated in front of a room full of strangers, and you think it's not a big deal? She shrugs. "Hey, you're alive, aren't you? That's something." I stare at her for a moment, then realize something. I don't think we're on the same planet right now. "Emily," I say slowly, "I think this is where we part ways." "Like, really?" Her smile falters for just a second. "What? Come on, don't be dramatic." "But I'm done. I'm officially out." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm just done. You're cool and all, but I don't think I can handle this, whatever this is." She stares at me for a moment, clearly trying to process. Then, in a move I'll never understand, she shrugs again and says, "All right. Well, it was a fun night." Then she walks away. I stand there for a second, shaking my head in disbelief. It's over. It's really over. So, yeah, that was it. Emily just walked away, disappearing into the night like I hadn't just experienced the craziest, most traumatic date of my life. I stood there for a solid minute, letting everything sink in. The restaurant. The dog. The weird waiter. The fact that I had just had a full-on existential crisis in the middle of a dinner date and nobody seemed to care except me. I started walking home, trying to get my bearings. And as I strolled through the streets, my mind kept looping back to Emily's reaction. She was fine. She was chill. Meanwhile, I had just had a mini meltdown, realizing that I had no idea what I wanted or expected out of this night. I thought I was looking for something normal, something safe, but instead, I found a restaurant full of chaos, a dog with a vendetta, and a date who seemed more interested in the vibe than anything remotely resembling a connection. And you know what? As I walked past a late-night cafe, I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so absurd. If someone had told me that I'd get chased by a dog, tackle into a dessert cart, and break up with a girl all in one night, I would have said they were crazy. And yet, here I was, still alive, slightly covered in tiramisu, but mostly laughing at the insanity of it all. I wasn't sure what I learned yet, but I did know one thing: life is chaotic. And sometimes, you just have to roll with it, no matter how weird, uncomfortable, or out of control it feels. In the end, maybe the lesson was to not take everything so seriously. Or maybe it was that I need to trust my instincts more and not just go along with things because it seems fine. But one thing's for sure: next time, I'll double-check the restaurant reviews for any mention of attack dogs. The end.